Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Maria Hamer, and I warmly welcome you to the ORF Radiokulturhaus. It's a pleasure and an honor to be leading you through this very special evening in the spirit of dialogue. As you came in, you have all received a program which gives you lots of information to look at afterwards, and you've all had the opportunity to get some simultaneous translation if you need it, in case for the English bits or the small French bit. So welcome again, ladies and gentlemen. I would now like to introduce His Excellency Faisal bin Muammar, the Secretary General of the International Dialogue Center, KAICIID. Would you please join me up on stage? Thank you. Good evening.
Well, thank you, Maria. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for giving me the chance to be with you tonight. I would like first to thank our national Austrian radio, or ORF, for hosting us here tonight. It is really an honor for us. And I am standing beside the flags of our founding states. The Republic of Austria, the Kingdom of Spain, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and the Holy See as a founding observer. It is an honor also to have in this hall our Viennese neighbors and the stakeholders who join us tonight to learn more and more about our mission. I would like to thank everybody who accepted the invitation and joined us. It is really an interesting journey for us. We started 5 years ago, and when we came to this golden city of Vienna, we joined the international organizations here. So Vienna became the home of the dialogue. And it's really an excellent experience for us to be here. As you see in this brochure, there is a lot of information, so I will not take much of your time to explain to you what is our mission and what is our program and what we are doing. But simply what we are doing is unique. Out of 400 institutions in the world, we are unique by our founding states and by our board, who are representing diverse religious groups coming from Jewish, Christian, Muslims, Hindus, Buddhists. And what we thought 5 years ago is to bring religious leaders to the dialogue table. So we start by doing special program called United Against Violence in the Name of Religion. And the simple explanation for that, we want to bring religious leaders to support policymakers. And that was really very, very important work to do. 5 million people in this planet, they have a certain belief. So we need to bring them to the dialogue table. What we want to do more than that. We are working now in different parts of the world, and we start getting the fruit of our work. We hope that we can contribute by converting many of the people who have certain beliefs to the dialogue. So that's really what we are doing. We hope you enjoy this evening with us. And again, I would like to thank you, Maria, and I would like to thank our partner, the Austrian National Radio, for hosting this evening. And again, to thank everybody who accepted the invitation and joined us to learn about KAICIID. And I think this brochure is full of the information. Have a great evening tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Excellency Faisal bin Muammar. I would now like to ask the Council of Parties up on stage, the representatives of the founding members of KAICIID. Her Excellency Ambassador Teresa Injain, the representative of Austria to KAICIID, Director General for International Cultural Relations at the Austrian Federal Ministry for European and International Affairs, His Excellency Ambassador Dr. Khalid Ibrahim Al Jindan, the Ambassador of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to Austria, Her Excellency Belén Alfaro from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Cooperations of the Kingdom of Spain, and on behalf of the Holy See, His Excellency Bishop Miguel Ayuso, the Secretary of the Pontifical Council for Interreligious Dialogue and a member of the KAICIID Board of Directors. May I ask the four of you to come up on stage and join me? We haven't met yet. Whoops. I think let's all share the light and the flags and everything. May I start with you, Ambassador Injain? Where everybody stands next to one flag. No, it's not in the order of flags. We can swap musical chairs. Ambassador Injain, may I start with you? The seat of Austria is here, the seat of KAICIID is here in Vienna. Why did Austria offer to host the center?
Well, Austria and the city of Vienna in particular has a long tradition of hosting major international organizations. Vienna is reputed also for hosting international conferences, and it is a place of dialogue. That's like the way we want to imagine ourselves. And dialogue should always be an intrinsic part of diplomacy. I'm learning also a lot about it. It is a very attentive and compassionate way of communication. And when it works, it will bring about change. It will bring about understanding, and it may even, to a certain extent, heal wounds. And that, in a nutshell, is KAICIID's mandate. Secretary General has just mentioned it has a unique multi-religious board of directors, a huge, very important advisory forum, and I must say that here tonight, an excellent international staff. And of course, it has accumulated by now, in its 6th year, a lot of knowledge about dialogue. So it bridges a gap in international peace building, and that is why we as Austrians are proud to host the center here in Vienna.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I will now come and stand in between the two of you. Ambassador Al Jindan, what was the vision behind founding KAICIID, and how did it all begin?
First, thank you so much and I really feel proud to be here this evening. Of course, many thanks go to the Austrian Federal Ministry for Foreign Affairs and FOR, and also the KAICIID for organizing this. I would like to start, by saying that true, KAICIID was based on a vision. This vision has its roots in another kind of dialogue that was held in Mecca in 2007, in which many numerous religious leaders came there, on the invitation of the late King Abdullah. But on that occasion, the discussion focused on intra-faith dialogue. Afterwards, this kind of dialogue assumed an interfaith dimension, and this triggered a sequence of events which I'm going to just touch upon. There was, of course, the historic visit of the late King Abdullah to Italy, also in 2007. That involved also a very historic meeting between the late king and the head of the Roman Church, the Catholic Church, Pope, of course, Pope, I think Benedict XVI. I remember I was there also, joining my foreign minister, who was a member of the official delegation and the royal visit. But I remember that we heard, that historic meeting went quite well. The two heads, had an excellent rapport. They also, during that meeting, it was clear that they both appreciated the value of interfaith dialogue, not only between Christianity and Islam. They thought also there are so many common factors that linked all religions in the world, because they all more or less focus on the same thing. They all appreciated equality, appreciated justice, peace, and whatever that is good for all humanity. So there are so many commonalities, that linked different religions and faith. So much so, that this agreement between these two important leaders, the custodian of the two holy mosques and the head of the Catholic Church, that agreement led or gave an impetus to a series of dedicated efforts on the part of the government of Saudi Arabia. The whole issue of dialogue then was taken to the United Nations, first to Madrid, In Madrid also, many leaders of religious authorities came in and took part in that gathering, and also they emphasized the commonalities between all the different faiths. That encouraged, of course, the late king to take the whole issue to the United Nations in Europe and presented it before the General Assembly, before the whole world. And that earned this dialogue the support of the international community. Well, of course, many years passed after that, and then we see now that the dialogue, which was a dream or a vision of our king, now is incorporated also by so many countries. And now we have what's called the Vision of 2030, which has enriched this basic dialogue by focusing on diversity, openness, international cooperation. I'm sorry I took up too much time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. Thank you very much. I will now turn to the representative of the Kingdom of Spain. How does Spain see its role in inter-religious dialogue?
Spain has a long outstanding tradition in dialogue. In medieval Spain, Toledo was a city where Christians, Jews, and Muslims lived together in peaceful coexistence and understanding and exchanging knowledge, the most advanced knowledge in mathematics, astronomy, and medicine at the time. Nowadays, for Spain, interreligious dialogue is a tool to promote peace, to promote tolerance, for conflict prevention, preventive diplomacy, and for the prevention of extremism. Interreligious dialogue can be a peace builder and a peacemaker. KAICIID is developing very relevant programs, establishing platforms of religious leaders for peace and projects in education and social media. Governments cannot act alone. This is a common endeavor. Together, governments, international organizations such as KAICIID, religious leaders, civil society, all together for the pursuit of peace, dialogue, and tolerance. We need organizations like KAICIID.
Thank you very much, Excellency. Thank you. Fantastic. I will now swap and come to your side. We have already heard that the Vatican was the first partner of Saudi Arabia. What made the Vatican want to be part of this endeavor?
Yeah, as His Excellency, the Ambassador of Saudi Arabia has mentioned, on November 2007, in an unprecedented visit to the Vatican for the first time in history, late King Abdullah bin Abdulaziz visited the Vatican, and on that occasion he was received in audience by His Holiness Pope Benedict XVI. In that meeting, among the rest, late King Abdullah, he shared with His Holiness the Pope his desire to better the world and working together for bettering humanity. Obviously, the Pope, as a church leader, leading all the universal church, Catholic Church, and in front of King Abdullah, leader of the Muslim community, he felt in conscience that something has to be done to that response. And therefore, the Pope, he supported the initiative. And then he entrusted to the Pontifical Council for Interreligious Dialogue, that is the ministry or the dicastery that is in charge of promoting dialogue, to initiate the dialogue for the creation of the center. So we took part in the whole process of, because for the Catholic Church and for the Holy See, what is a priority is dialogue. And since the Second Vatican Council, the Holy See is trying to promote intercultural and interreligious dialogue. This is the priority, and the Holy See has seen in KAICIID another initiative that be really in line with the finality the Church wants for the entire humanity. That is a dialogue that be constructive, a dialogue for anyone, anybody, anywhere, and in any time. A dialogue open to all, a dialogue that be respectful through religious freedom, in integrating everybody in this culture of inclusivism as Pope Francis wants, made up of respect and friendship. And therefore, a dialogue that I would say that has to be without borders, bidun hudud. Thank you.
I thank you very much. Your Excellencies, I thank you all very much, and I would ask you to take your seats again. Thank you very much. In the spirit of dialogue, I would now like to introduce the next very special person here on stage, and this is Professor Mohammed Abu Nimer. He's the senior advisor of KAICIID and professor at the School of International Service at the American University, who's a global expert on conflict resolution and dialogue for peace. Professor Abu Nimer, may I ask you to come and join me here on stage? Professor Abu Nimer, we have heard a little bit, but please do tell me more about KAICIID. How is it organized?
Well, thank you again, and I think we've heard the great descriptions and the explanation about the mandate of KAICIID as well. KAICIID is really composed of a governing body, the COP, and the board of directors, but also it is diverse in its staff. We have around 55 staff members who come from 20 different countries or more, and they are themselves multi-religious. but also you don't have to be religious or practice your faith to be a staff in KAICIID. We're very diverse in that way as well. We also have 50% women in the organization in different positions and work. So it's really unique, not only in the composition of government and religious institution, but also in the staff who do the work on daily basis. I think a couple of our COP leaders mentioned that we have an advisory forum as well, which is a group of about 56 faith-based organizations, civil society, and those also provide us with input, provide us with network around the world in that area.
Who provides you with money? How is it financed?
Well, actually, as you also heard, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the late King Abdullah, has committed for finance and support for the first 3 years, and it was renewed for another 3 years. But we also work with the international governmental organization. We also do a little bit of partnership on the ground, and we do what we call cost sharing. So we don't always put the money in. Other partners, like we'll talk about them later, they also contribute to this.
And if somebody has never heard about KAICIID before, how in 3 phrases would you tell him what precisely you're doing?
We are trying to bridge the gap between policymakers and religious institutions and leaders, because we make the assumption, and we believe in that without the collaboration and cooperation between those entities, it will be more challenging to respond to violence in the name of religion. It will be more challenging to promote religious diversity, religious freedom. That's really what KAICIID does. It contributes to the religious diversity, to respect, removing barriers of ignorance between people, among people who live in the same place.
And what does it mean to be an intergovernmental organization dealing with religious and interreligious issues?
I mean, that brings me again to the concept of uniqueness. There are hundreds of faith-based organizations, and there are NGOs, non-profit organizations, or sometimes even for-profit. KAICIID unique in the fact that in the same house, you find the foreign ministry representative or voice, as well as you find 5 religious, major religion in the world represented in our 9 board members who are well-known, renowned in their experience for dialogue. What characterizes us is that if we work in any given place, we go through the front door. We go with invitation by the government. We work with the intergovernmental organization. We are multilateral in our work. So we're not your typical NGO who does work on the ground.
And we've already heard that KAICIID is based in Vienna, but your work spreads to the world.
Yes, we are. And maybe just one word of clarification on this intergovernmental issue. KAICIID was created to bridge the gap between religious institutions and policymakers. And that gap exists because we operate in those 2 worlds. In one world, especially in the north, we operate in a secular government where religion and the voice of religious leaders and institutions is avoided, neglected, not always taken into consideration in responding to refugee and environment, other issues. But we also operate in parts of the world, in the south in particular, where there is too much religion in everything. And KAICIID is being challenged to help find the healthy balance of how do you bring the constructive contribution of religious institution into responding to a problem. And yes, and we do that.
Now I come to my question again. So based in Vienna,
in Austria,
working in the world.
Yeah, and in Austria, our host and our stakeholder here, we work with, we have a project on refugee integration with 5 competent group of women who help refugee for integration. We also have done many outreach activity to support the interfaith dialogue organizations and individuals who work here. We've done lots of activity on culture, art, even sport, football. We have many of these activities for reaching out. But outside of Austria, we also do work in conflict areas. So we have guests today, you'll hear from them more, from Nigeria, from Central African Republic, from the Arab region, Iraq, Syria in particular, Lebanon and Jordan. We also work in Myanmar, where and probably the common element for those 4 areas is the fact that the religious identity is continuously manipulated by politicians and also by religious institutions and leaders. We come in to say we can offer you a platform, neutral, for you to negotiate, to talk, to dialogue in responding to problems of hate speech, problem of incitement in media, for incitement in education. So that's the type of work in this conflict area. The other area where we work is really related to what we call capacity building. So you take the Scout organization is 44 million members in the Scout, and we have one represented here. The 44 million members, we ask them, we ask their headquarters, how do you deal with interreligious dialogue? And they said, we need your help to come and mainstream this topic. And we, for the last 4 years, accompanied them in the process where we integrated that. Similar activity we do with UNESCO, with UNDP, with UNICEF. Even our Deputy Secretary just came back from European Union in another attempt to open doors there and convince policymakers to engage with the religious leader. Maybe one more area of operation we have a great program of fellows. We have over 120 fellows who've graduated, and these are from over 60 different countries. They come and do courses with us, and then they go back to their community and do interesting initiative, and they become ambassadors for KAICIID. And we also have an online course. We need to support the field of interreligious dialogue through research and also online work.
It sounds great in theory, but does it always kind of work in practice? Can you share a story where you can tell us how it really worked and why it was so precious to work out?
Well, I mean, there are plenty of both anecdotal as well as evidence that we've done in our work. I maybe start with the Muslim Jewish Rabbi and Imam Council European in Europe, an initiative we started over a year ago, and it actually took off surprisingly for many people, and they managed to create a platform, the first one in European context, where Muslim imams and Jewish rabbi work on issues of common concern in European context. And they develop an action plan, and we're about to unfold that action plan and begin the first activity in Amsterdam, hopefully this summer. And that's a great platform that we created, similar to other platforms in conflict areas. A Sri Lankan Buddhist monk who is a fellow, 3 months ago, he was witnessing the riots in his community in Sri Lanka. And instead of watching, as many other religious or policymakers will do, what he did, he convened Muslim, Christian, and Buddhist and Hindu group, and he began visiting the areas where mosques were burned and other also areas that were damaged, and doing solidarity and relief and aid work with them. Finally, the latest successful story, for the first time, we have an Arabic platform for Muslim and the Christian religious leader was launched 2 months ago. For the last 1,500 years, Jews and Arabs and Muslims and the Christians as well lived in the Middle East. But between Muslim and the Christian religious leader, there was no joint platform to do activity. And finally, KAICIID brought them to Vienna, and they agreed and launched their first platform that we hope it will be a new joint space for them to work together.
Thank you very much, Professor Abu Nimer. I think this mercies an applause, yeah?
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've heard a little bit about KAICIID as an institution, but let us hear from a small sampling of KAICIID partners from all around the world about the interreligious dialogue in particular, what it means and what it accomplishes. We're going to watch a video.
The opportunity and safe space provided by KAICIID is like a crucible, a test tube that allows the variety from different parts of the world to come together and make you better when you come out than when you went in.
We all live in plural societies. We live in societies where we are either Muslim, Christian, paganist. We are people of all colors. We are simply human beings. But we have to accept, to understand each other. We have to accept that you can be belonging to ethnic X. I belong to ethnic Y. But we have to respect each other.
People need self-expression. They need a space where they can talk about their values without being judged. And that's very critical in this world. I think for me, interreligious dialogue promotes positive peace.
The teaching of that we've been gaining here at KAICIID would really help address or manage the perceptions that people have, and help people have a bond of brotherhood or sisterhood, a humanity bond.
First of all, we need to try to reach other people, to talk about ourselves. Otherwise, how can they know us and change their stereotypes? Interreligious dialogue make me stronger in understanding my religion.
I think interreligious dialogue is at its best the opportunity to question your own tradition, your own values, your own way of thinking, believing, not fearing to lose your own identity or to lose your own faith just because you're confronted with another faith.
Ladies and gentlemen, the title of the next segment is What is Dialogue? Basic Principles and Methods of Dialogue. And we have a great expert here tonight. Professor Patrice Brodeur is also a KAICIID senior advisor, as well as a professor at the Institute of Religious Studies at the University of Montreal. Welcome, Professor Brodeur. Welcome again. Thank you very much. The last speaker in the video, Moritz, says that dialogue can be personally transformative. What does that say about the nature of dialogue? Is it just a persuasive conversation? I'm asking the two of you, and whoever wants to respond first.
Well, let me simply begin by thanking you for this important link that we've just heard from the dialogue video that we saw. And I believe very strongly that it's potentially transformative if well done. In order to do dialogue, good dialogue, we really need to practice what we call 10 principles. And so we share sort of, in a back and forth way, we'll share those different 10 principles with you. And the first one is really, I think, has to deal with the core of any disagreement with fear. In order to overcome our fear, we need this safe space that allow people to speak honestly and overcome that sense of what will happen if I say my opinion. And that come under the notion of safety. A second one has to do with the notion of learning. You see, when you come to dialogue, you're not coming to solve a problem. And I think that's a mistake to think about this way. You come to the dialogue to learn, as one of the fellows said, how ignorant you are. And when you discover that, you really feel guilty. And you really feel that you have wasted so many years of your life without meeting the other. Therefore, our first title in the dialogue usually, you are here to learn, and mostly about yourself. And another principle, of course, is when you come together, we need to agree on the purpose. Why do we actually come together? What are the objectives? To set the ground rules from that angle, and work on the ground rules to go and abide by the dialogue. So these are two other principles.
Once we establish those, what we have is to convince people in the room it's okay to take a risk. To say that I think you all terrorists.
Okay.
Or I think you are all ignorant. Or I was raised to be afraid from you. To say these things in a dialogical setting, it requires risk and I think also a little bit of courage. If you don't say them, you're going to continue and live in your many of your stereotypes, and you'll be amazed how each one of them, of us, how many stereotypes we have. But at the end, dialogue is really about building relationships among people who do not know each other, and also it's not what you used to call in the Israel-Palestine, it's not hummus falafel meeting. It will help to have hummus and falafel.
I'm hungry.
However, you need to talk about hard questions, hard issues. Dialogue, if it doesn't relate to the hard issues, it's not going to lead to a genuine and honest interaction.
And that's precisely why when you actually practice true and deep dialogue, it can get pretty difficult. It can actually get rough internally in terms of how to struggle with what happens from learning from these different perspectives that maybe you did not expect. And so in that sense, you have to make sure that you do not quit. You do not quit, you stay with it. And that ability to be resilient in dialogue through the ups and downs that you discover along the way is essential. With that comes, of course, a process of transformation, that we have to be ready to potentially change some of our understanding and perceptions about the others that are involved with us in this dialogue or elsewhere in the world. So that's another very important thing. And all of this change that we go through makes us really believers in dialogue. And that's why many of us are so committed to dialogue, because we're transformed internally by that particular process. And so the last thing that we have in our 10 principles is to therefore have the responsibility to share that possibility of changing ourselves and others in the process. And that's part of our long list of principles.
But if I have understood correctly, what you've been saying refers to all sorts of dialogues. What makes interreligious dialogue special?
Well, obviously, all kinds of dialogues, will actually share a common basis along the lines of what we've said in many ways. Interreligious dialogue in particular is when you actually focus more on that part of one's global, complex identity that is more religious in nature for some of us. Obviously, some people are not religious, but others are. So for those for whom religion is important, then it's sharing about those important aspects in terms of beliefs, in terms of rituals, in terms of values that actually explain why we do what we do in the world as religious people. And so the process of interreligious dialogue is to share this, to eventually identify commonalities out of which the common action can take place.
Yeah, many times people, when Patrice and myself work in this area, and he knows it even better than me because he comes from comparative religion, I come from peace and conflict resolution. They ask us, what do you do? Do you always debate theology? Do you talk about the prophets and the principles of theology? And we rarely do that. In fact, this is what we call a dialogue of theology, or a dialogue of theological dialogue. We don't do that. We do something we call dialogue of life. And dialogue of life is about how is my religious identity obstructing or facilitating my integration in the society as citizen, as contributing individual. So we focus on, we can talk about health, and then how does my religious identity help with health? We can talk about gender, and then we can talk about how does my religious identity help me to be more gender sensitive and less prejudiced against race, ethnicity, or whatever other issues. So we focus on the conflicts and the issues that people live them day to day, and we ask how can your religious identity help you in that. And that's what we hope policymakers will pick up from our conversation in this area.
The two of you are very positively contagious, and but
hope so.
and you are convincing people to share the dialogue. What happens if people refuse, if they don't want to engage the dialogue? Has that happened?
We give them hummus and falafel.
That's a good idea.
Yes, it has happened, of course, and it continues to be the case that there are a variety of different reasons why people actually don't want to engage in dialogue, and there's a few of them that we want to share with you because it's really important. First of all, when we meet some resistance, whatever the nature is to stop and to simply take the time to ask why you don't want to join. Why you don't like, this invitation, this open invitation for you to join this dialogue, circle, action, etc. And being honest with listening, first and foremost, to the answer given, so that you don't just dismiss the person on the, right from the beginning because they don't want to come, but rather you take the time to hear what is the nature of their perception about dialogue which makes them not want to come. Once that is clear, then you have to begin to take very specific examples that are counter-arguments to that particular perception about dialogue, to hopefully in the process change their mind and make them maybe take the first step towards taking the risk to come and participate in an event. But it takes careful planning in advance, and you don't necessarily spring this up on people who are afraid or somehow skeptical about dialogue. So there are many reasons for being skeptical, right?
Yeah, I mean, skepticism come from mostly fear why they don't come to the dialogue of affecting their identity. But my most difficult challenges with this has been throughout the work is when you find somebody who does not recognize the other side, their humanity, their group, their religion, with such a level of denial. It's very hard to convince them to come to the dialogue. And sometimes we meet people in security in areas where security is a real concern. I've met an imam in Somalia who lost 13 of his peers in the fighting. And they still call him to come for dialogue. And he still made the decision to come and speak with his enemies. This is more of an interfaith conversation. The last one which is the classic critique, dialogue does not produce justice. People don't come to dialogue because they have been victimized for so long, and you need to do lots of work as a preparation. One technique we do to overcome some of these challenges, we separate the two groups. We work separately for 2, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, until the group is ready to say, I am ready to meet the other side. And that's one technique we use, and we take the themes with them.
Thank you.
And of course, there's the generic sort of, reaction that some people say that it's only blah, blah. Dialogue is just, empty words at the end. You're preaching to the converted, or anyway, it's only sort of high-level people that are doing this, and what's the point? And so these are all kinds of stereotypes, I think, that we know and we have encountered a lot of, and we need to address seriously.
Professor Abunimah has already given an example of where he was really challenged. Can you also give us an example of where you found it particularly difficult?
Yes, I coming from a Canadian background, I think that if one, I grew up in a context whereby my primary identity was as a minority French Canadian. Until I start to realize that, yes, but within Quebec, I'm a majority. And not only that, but then of course, we've been part together with sort of the majority Anglo-Saxon folks in historically Canada, we've been part of a colonial system against Indigenous people. So in some ways, it's very easy to feel one's minority and much more difficult to realize when we're part of a majority dynamic, and therefore, in dialoguing with Indigenous communities, taking a step back to carefully listen and hear with as much openness and compassion as possible the critique that comes from that history and the underlying continuous injustices, structural injustices that are taking place regarding Indigenous communities is a real challenge for me. And I have to stick with it to continue that dialogue in a profound way if I really want to talk justice in real terms so that I can actually be part of more solutions than being part of the problem.
Thank you very much for sharing that with us.
I want to say that, as if you heard him carefully, it's very dangerous to be engaged in dialogue. It's not a simple business of talking. If you take it seriously, dialogue can be dangerous.
Well, then this is a dangerous last word for this section, but Professor Abunimah and Professor Brodeur, I thank you very much. And I would ask you to take your seats again. And ladies and big applause. Ladies and gentlemen, I will now also leave the stage because I will leave it for a fantastic trio. We are going to hear some lovely, lovely music now. The trio is called Cobario, and it consists of Jakob Lackner, Herwig Schaffner, and Georg Eichberger. The trio was selected for the sponsorship program for young musicians, the New Austrian Sound of Music, by the Ministry for Europe, Integration and Foreign Affairs in the year of 2016. Their songs include a strong orientation towards Spanish folklore, but also rich Irish, Oriental, and Slavic influences, you will hear. And with the support of the Austrian Foreign Ministry, the trio performed concerts in many countries around the world, including the embassy in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. So please join me in welcoming Cobario, taking us to a trip to the Côte d'Azur, because their first piece of music is called Nizza.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are Cobario from Vienna, and as you've heard before, we would like to take you on a musical journey which is going through France and Spain today. We will play 3 pieces, and the first one is called, as the town where we wrote it, it's called Nice. So let's go as first to the Côte d'Azur.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was great music. And that was a lot of theoretical talk about dialogue up to now. So let's get practical, hands-on. The title of the next segment is Dialogue of Peace-Building, Reconciliation and Healing. And it's a great honor to introduce the most amazing guests from different parts of the world to you tonight. I will now ask Sheikh Haliru Abdullahi Maraya, the co-facilitator of the One Family Under God campaign in Nigeria, a program moderating peaceful meetings between tribal and traditional rulers whose people have been afflicted by violent extremism in their daily lives, and Imam Omar Kobine Layama, together with Cardinal Dieudonné Nzabalanga, who are among the founding members of the Central African Republic's Interfaith Platform, which works towards interreligious peace and understanding. The third guest in this segment comes from Myanmar, and he's Harry Miolin, a trainer and community activist working in Myanmar on peace and human rights issues, who's also KAICIID's country expert. And last but definitely not least, it's Her Excellency Amal Al-Mualimi, a senior leader at the Saudi National Dialogue Center and board member of the Human Rights Committee. May I ask you to come and join me on stage? Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We will be mostly speaking in English, apart from the Central African Republic. May I start with you? Our first guest comes from Nigeria. Yes, you have the microphones in front of you. You come from the Kaduna State, a place which very recently, unfortunately, has made it to the world's news because of violent clashes between Muslims and Christians. Sheikh Abdullahi Maraya, the latest outburst of violence between Christians and Muslims might have damaged some of your precious work. In this setting, do you ever give up and feel dialogue is pointless?
Thank you very much for asking me this question. In response to it, I would like to start by saying that dialogue is a very significant component in peace building. And its objective is always to develop peaceful relationships, understanding, trust among people or groups who are in conflict. And you will quite agree with me that today, in the present world, there are two things which are currently bedeviling the entire globe. One, incessant killings of innocent souls. The second one is the destruction of property, religious places inclusive. And the only thing that can extinguish the fire of the incessant killings and the destruction of property contemporarily is dialogue. Therefore, what is currently happening in my country and other parts of the world will never discourage me from advocating the spirit of dialogue. As a Muslim, I consider dialogue as something that is very paramount as far as the upholding of the entire human rights is concerned. That is why in the 9th year of Hijrah, the messenger of Islam, Muhammad, peace be upon him, embarked upon a dialogue with a 61-man Christian delegation from Najran. Najran is presently part and parcel of the present Saudi Arabia. This clearly showcases that if the world is really to enjoy peace, then advocates of dialogue should not get discouraged, because definitely across the path of dialogue, there are unquantifiable challenges. But whenever any challenge crops up, you are expected as an advocate of dialogue to get bolstered, not to get discouraged. In a nutshell, I would like to say that I will not give up, because I have started seeing the result in my country, Nigeria. Between 1981 and 2015, more than 25,000 souls were lost in my own state, Kaduna State, not the entire country, Nigeria. But due to the intervention of KAICIID, using the tool of dialogue and other NGOs, today I can tell you that from 2017 to this time I'm talking to you, only 20 lives have been lost. And this is attributable to the concept of dialogue, which has been embraced by the Nigerian people. Today, people of diverse religious identities who hitherto were not befriending one another, we are not relating cordially with one another, but consequent upon the spirit of dialogue, today, imams, Christian clergies, among others, are exchanging visitation. This is attributable to dialogue. Therefore, I will not give up. I will continue to be an advocate of dialogue, because it is the only tool that can be used to extinguish the fire of incessant killings and the destruction of property.
Thank you very much for having said that. Thank you. Thank you again. Well, from Nigeria, we travel to the Central African Republic. When Pope Francis made Dieudonné Nzapalainga Cardinal of Bangui in the Central African Republic 2 years ago, he became the youngest cardinal and the first one to be born after the Second Vatican Council. So we have a VIP here, many VIPs here today. And Imam Omar Kobine Layama is, amongst many other functions, president of the Central African Islamic Community, member of the Union of Ulamas of Africa, an expert on Muslim-Christian entries from PROCRUMA, the Program of Christian-Muslim Relations in Africa. Together, they are 2 out of 3 leaders of the so-called CAR interface platform, which they formed after the beginning of the civil war in 2013. They were voted by the Time magazine in 2014 as 3 out of the top 100 most influential people in the world, and have also received international prizes for their work together. Cardinal Nzapalainga, when you and other religious leaders came up with the idea of the interfaith platform, what were you hoping to achieve at the very beginning? We'll translate it into French.
3 verbes à retenir. D'abord, soigner, unir et sauver. Soigner parce qu'en 2013, nous avons eu une crise qui a laissé des plaies, la haine, la vengeance, la destruction, des pillages partout. Et nous avons pensé qu'il est important pour nous, leaders religieux, de nous retrouver ensemble pour dialoguer. Le remède, c'est le dialogue pour désamorcer la haine dans les cœurs, dans les esprits des gens, les mettre ensemble. Et nous avons vu des résultats chez les jeunes, chez les femmes, chez les adultes. Nous avons pensé aussi, pour le deuxième verbe, il était important d'unir, qu'on soit musulmans, chrétiens et autres. Nous sommes tous des êtres humains. Nous sommes tous des Centrafricains. Et il est important que nous puissions considérer la richesse, la différence comme richesse et non comme un obstacle ou un danger, une menace pour nous et pour l'autre. Le troisième verbe, c'est sauver. Nous sommes de la religion de la parole. Chez les musulmans, les juifs, les chrétiens, on parle de la parole. Et nous pensons que cette parole qui arrive de Dieu, c'est une parole qui sauve. Et nous devons maintenant nous laisser toucher par cette parole qui sauve. Et ce qui sort de nous pour entrer en dialogue, ça devait être une parole qui sauve, parole de vie. Et nous pensons qu'il est important pour nous de créer des espaces de vie, des espaces où les êtres puissent se retrouver pour s'estimer, être ensemble. Et le dialogue est ce lieu privilégié pour que nous puissions entrer en communication, nous puissions nous respecter, nous accueillir mutuellement.
Merci beaucoup. This was lovely, Your Eminency. Thank you. Imam Layam, I trust that my question is also going to be translated to you, and it will be more personal. The fact is that you, together with your family, had to flee your home, and you found shelter in the house of Cardinal Ntsapalanga after severe Christian-Muslim clashes a couple of years ago. So ever since, he's living with his wife and 5 children in the house of the Cardinal. May I ask you, when after the first night you came down for breakfast in this new surrounding, what were your thoughts? Did that finding shelter in the house of the Cardinal change anything for you personally?
Merci infiniment pour la question. Ce jour-là, c'était le 5 décembre 2013. Au plus petit matin, la crise a débuté et c'était le désordre qui se répandait dans la ville, surtout la capitale Bangui. Et vers 14 heures, les militaires sont venus me faire sortir de chez moi parce que nous avons commencé déjà à faire le travail de la plateforme depuis 2012. Nous avons commencé ce travail pour la paix, pour le dialogue interreligieux, avant que les Balakas puissent rentrer aussi en fonction. Et nous nous sommes retrouvés à la présidence avec le président de l'époque, Nyoto Dia, pour lancer un appel de paix, de désarmement de cœur, de cohésion sociale et du vivre ensemble. Et voilà qu'au sortir de cette audience avec le chef de l'État, mon frère m'a tendu une invitation. Et mon frère imam, la situation est difficile. Si vous allez ailleurs, ça sera difficile pour nous de conjuguer nos efforts. Ne pouvez-vous pas venir chez moi? Je me suis rappelé de l'histoire du début de l'islam, quand les musulmans, les juifs chrétiens qui vivaient à Yasrib, voyant les musulmans persécutés à la Mecque par les païens, envoyaient chaque année une invitation pour fête de l'islam Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. En me rappelant de cette invitation, j'ai accepté très volontairement l'invitation de mon frère, où j'ai passé 6 mois avec ma famille, mon épouse et mes enfants chez lui pendant 6 mois. Et je sortais de chez moi sans rien. Sans rien, avec un petit sac dedans, il y avait seulement mon Coran et mon tapis de prière. Et un seul complet comme je l'ai porté en ce moment. Cela a marqué aussi mon frère le cardinal, qui a dit, mais un homme qui quitte chez lui, sans rien prendre, seulement avec son livre saint, son tapis de prière et une tenue. En tout cas, c'est vrai, l'homme vient sur cette terre les mains vides et repartira aussi les mains vides. Donc j'étais obligé de rester chez mon frère. Pendant 6 mois, nous avons travaillé dans nos communautés au risque et péril de notre vie, en allant vers les groupes armés pour les adresser les paroles, désarmement de cœur, réunir nos compatriotes pour ne pas se faire entraîner par la politique, parce que la crise est une crise politique. Je tiens à le signaler ici devant tous ceux que vous avez invités pour nous écouter, que la crise centrafricaine n'est pas qu'une crise religieuse, mais la religion a été instrumentalisée par les politiques pour des fins politiques. Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup. So that was a wonderful example of interfaith dialogue and great hospitality. I was wrong in the durance of the hospitality. I'm sorry for that. But from Africa, we now travel to Asia, to Myanmar, a country consisting of at least 130 ethnic groups and many more different languages. In Europe, we have heard about the strife facing the Rohingyas, but unfortunately, there are many more violent conflicts in the country that do not ever make it to news in Austria and Europe. Harry Miolin is the KAICIID country expert for Myanmar and a long-time peace activist, human rights activist, and founder and executive director of the NGO called The Seagull. Mr. Miolin, can you tell us a little bit more about the factors that are contributing to the situation at the moment?
Yes, thank you, Maria. We already know about the terrible situation that the Rohingya community is facing in the west part of Myanmar. And there are a lot of other conflicts that has impact on the millions of the population in Myanmar. One of them to unfold tonight, I would like to talk about the situation in Kachin and Shan state, which are in the northern and northeastern part of the country, where the ethnic armed conflict is still ongoing, and there are a lot of military offensive happening currently. And we have the National Peace Dialogue process started in 2016, started by the first ever democratically elected government led by the Nobel laureate Aung San Suu Kyi. But for various reasons, some of the most important ethnic armed groups are not included in the process, and most of them are located in the northern and the eastern part of the country in Kachin and Shan state. And soon, months after the process is started, the fighting is still going on. And currently, we have more than 100,000 IDPs in Kachin and Shan state, apart from the Rohingya population in western part of the country. And to go to some underlying causes, we have to say that we have a big prejudice against the religious communities, minority religious communities in our countries, and we have a strong ethnic religious nationalism, even promoted by some political party, which leads to a lot of the tension among the religious and as well as the ethnic group. And we have a big socio-economic problem also. We have a big inequality among the social status, and we have a systematic marginalization to the various ethnic and religious minorities within the countries.
Well, thank you very much. Perhaps just for clarification, IDP, the big number mentioned, is internally displaced people, and this is, unfortunately, this number is very high. But how can you change things, especially by the terms of interreligious dialogue? How can you address those conflict drivers, and what precisely do you do?
Yes, interreligious dialogues, and for me, is very important for the country like Myanmar, because the religious leaders play a very important leadership role in our communities for the different religions, and also the religious identity contribute a very important part of most of the conflict we are facing. So by promoting interreligious dialogues, we are also working on to bridge between the different religious communities that can come together, and hopefully that the organic peace process, while the national process is not working, can happen from the grassroots. And in our program, in KAICIID Myanmar program, when we talk about the interreligious dialogue, we are not talking only about the dialogue happening among the religious leaders in higher level. We also talk about we also work on the initiative that bring the spirit of dialogue into the community and the various level of the society. So we work with the women's group, we work with farmers, we work with teachers, we work with policymakers, so that the concept and the importance of dialogues can spread through the whole society. For me, choosing the way to promote dialogue is also an attempt to socialize the military and political leaders and some religious leaders that they can come and talk, and there is an alternative ways to resolve the conflicts they are having other than fighting and killing each other.
Well, thank you very much. From Myanmar, we traveled to the Arab region to learn more about the work in dialogue that has been done there. Mrs. Amal Al-Mualimi, welcome. Your Excellency, you are one of the top leaders at Saudi Arabia's National Dialogue Center, which has partnered with KAICIID and has in common a commitment to dialogue. You work in a region where interreligious dialogue has been very challenging in the past. What do you think is the outlook for that in the wider Arab region?
Thank you for giving me the chance to talk about our experience in Saudi Arabia and spreading the culture of dialogue. My friend here, he said that they use dialogue as a distinguisher for fire. We use dialogue as a anti-fire spray. So we start with dialogue to avoid conflict. And we started this very earlier in the beginning of this new millennium. We try to spread the culture of dialogue and make dialogue a style of life for Saudi people. Through dialogue, we promote the common human values of openness, of tolerance, of common understanding, of showing respect for cultural diversity, and also respect our differences and preserve our similarity and celebrate our similarity. So this is what we were doing. And to do so, we realized that we had to target the 3 most important institutes in Saudi Arabia that shape the Saudi character. That was the mosque, the school, and the family. So we developed special programs for educators and for mutawwa and for imam and sheikh and clerks and Islamic scholar, and another one for parents and for children to help them to communicate and build bridges among each other inside the family. Our experience was unique, and we started this when no other country in our region has something similar to this center, a specialized center with a specialized academy only for dialogue. This attracted the International Scout Organization and UNESCO to come and explore the training programs that we are having, and KAICIID also did so. So we were glad that they like what we were doing and they adopt some of our training programs and they develop it, and they will take it to upper level by adopting these programs under the umbrella of UNESCO and making our Dialogue Academy Category B Academy under the umbrella of UNESCO. And in this situation, we will be able to spread this cultural dialogue. We will spread this culture among all the Arab countries and the regions around us.
Bravo. And some of your work is particularly in training women for dialogue. Why the women especially?
Do you know Saudi women?
Not that many.
They are very strong, dedicated, and very enthusiastic. So if they want to do something, they will do it. In National Dialogue Center, I claim that we were the first platform that allow women to participate in the public issues and have them sit side by side with men discussing political, religious, social, educational issues together. So in order to do so, we pay more attention for women because we want women to advocate for their cases by themselves. So we work to scale up women and provide them with all the skills necessary for them to be able to explain their point of view and to receive no as an answer sometimes and deal with yes in a positive way. So this is what we were trying to do. If you educate a man, you are educating an individual, but if you educate a woman, you are educating the whole family. And women is 50% of our population in Saudi Arabia, and they are raising the other 50%.
So that's very convenient. Thank you very much for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much to all of you. I could go on asking questions for a very much longer time, and listen to your answers, but unfortunately, I will have to ask you to go back to your seats, and I will also leave the stage so we can leave it entirely to Cobario again and their second piece of music called Aurora. Thank you so much again. That's been lovely. Oops. So we are now moving to our next section, Dreams and Challenges for Interreligious Dialogue Today. What do key religious leaders, all of whom are members of KAICIID's Board of Directors, hope and dream for dialogue and peace? And what are the roadblocks and opportunities for success along the way? This section is going to be, I'm very grateful, moderated by Professor Patrice Brodeur, whom you have met before. And I would like him and the panelists to join me up here on stage. It's a big honor to have here in Vienna with us tonight Dr. Kezevino Aram, Director of Shanti Ashram and a leader of dialogue efforts for the past 20 years. His Eminence, Metropolitan Emmanuel, Exarch of the Ecumenical Patriarchate of Constantinople, Chief Rabbi David Rosen, former Chief Rabbi of Ireland and now International Director of Interreligious Affairs of the American Jewish Committee, and last but not least, Dr. Mohammed Samak, Secretary General of the National Committee for Christian-Muslims Dialogue in Lebanon. May I ask the five to please join me on stage. Thank you. I will Thank you.
I want to congratulate you for this talent, high talent.
Please come and sit here next to me. Thank you very much. I will stop saying things. Professor Brodeur, you start.
For a break for you. There you go. Well, I hope this, yes, you can hear me now. Okay, great. It's an honor to welcome you as part of the Board of Directors of KAICIID and now to share your experience. You're all veterans of dialogue for, if I may say so, decades. And first and foremost, you are also religious leaders in your own different ways. And so we would like to start by asking each one of you, from the perspective of your own religious tradition, why is dialogue so important? Dr. Aram?
It brings me back to the paths to the divine grace within my own tradition. And the different paths that have been alluded to in my tradition has been the path of devotion, bhakti, the path of seeking knowledge or pursuit of knowledge, the path of action and collective service, but also the path of leadership. And I think to me, in all these different paths of celebrating and connecting oneself to the divine grace is also the tremendous opportunity of collaboration. I think in each one of these paths there is a journey where companions together and companions in some ways in the spirit of pilgrimage can explore this. And that is why I think from time to time within the Hindu tradition we have had interpretations for the need and the invitation to work together. And dialogue to me also is something that is beyond mere conversation. It's even beyond working for a common purpose. It is for me a call, a divine call, to be in union with the human being and the human community around us. So I think it's a very powerful call, and it is a call to live the truest and the purest form of our tradition.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Your Eminence.
Yes, thank you, Patrice. First of all, the word dialogue brings us the sense of what it really means. But it's a call, and also it's a communication. We live in a world of communication. And when we're using the word dialogue, which is a Greek word, it also means that there is a communication between humanity and divine. And it's dia, logu, the logos that came onto earth. And I think that also I was talking just before coming into the room about the principles of dialogue of Article 17 of the European Union. It's very similar, actually, to what a dialogue is. It has to be sincere, it has to be ongoing, and it has to be transparent and open. And this is what we are all engaged into that, because we would like to bring the peace from above onto earth. And this will not come with arms. It will not come with weapons, but the oil of faith, as we declared in the Holy Council 2 years ago, is there to soothe the wounds, rather to rekindle the hatred in the world. This is the purpose of dialogue, and this is all of us that we are engaged into this process, because it's a process above all.
Thank you.
Automatic?
They're automatic, imagine. Okay. It's great.
Well, amazing technology. So thank you very much, Dr. Patrice, for this question, because I think it enables us, as we've already heard from my colleagues, and I would especially like to echo Dr. Vino, the dimension which until now had not been really touched on. A dialogue is enormously important as a tool to be able to promote peace and reconciliation. But even if there is not conflict, it's terribly important. Why is it important? You asked what it means to us. Dialogue, above all, is the opportunity to genuinely encounter the other, to know the other, to truly respect the other, to engage the other at the deepest level of her or his identity. But through that, we encounter, as we heard, that which transcends each and every one of us. Our religious traditions indicate that it is in the human encounter that we discover that which transcends that which is human. In other words, for the religious person, dialogue is a religious experience. It's not just a means, a tool to achieve things. That's very important too, but it's more than that. There is something pure and spiritual in the encounter itself that enables us to discover the reality of the divine presence in a world beyond our own particular traditions and particular identities. The idea that any one tradition can encapsulate the totality of the divine is ridiculous. God is more than any one religious tradition. But we can never know the entirety of the world. But when we encounter the other genuinely, respectfully, to discover that world of the other, to experience the encounter with the other, we encounter the divine beyond our own particular tradition and heritage. And therefore, for me, as important as it is to be engaged in dialogue, to overcome prejudice and bigotry, to be able to promote goodwill and understanding, above all, dialogue is the greater encounter with a divine presence in our world at large. And therefore, it's enormous enrichment, an enormous gift. And personally, I think I'm incredibly privileged to be able to spend as much of my life encountering that spiritual reality above and beyond my own tradition and heritage.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now, Dr. Sammak.
Well, the question is not simple, but the answer is simple. We have to dialogue simply because we are different. In this hall, nobody is like the other. Not a single fingerprint or eye print is like the other. We are different. We are different in our ethnicities, in our religions, in our culture, in our languages. So why we don't enjoy this difference? Why we don't celebrate our differences? That's what we are. By dialogue, we do not mean to eliminate or to overcome our differences, but to recognize these differences, to celebrate our differences, and to live it as it is. the pleasure of plurality, richness of plurality in culture, in religion, in ethnicity. This is life. This is a gift of God. In our Islamic tradition, God created us different. And it is in the will of God to be different until the end of time. So we don't, by dialogue, we don't mean to eliminate differences, but to celebrate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I am moved by your respective responses and the complementarity in many ways, both between you, but also with some of the contributions that were made earlier tonight. But that is the beauty and what moves us and pulls us in terms of the values and the vision that is behind your respective sharing about dialogue from your respective points of views and religious traditions. My question now, in any order that you feel called to respond, is maybe a more challenging one, is that maybe we have to recognize that not every person's within our respective religious communities are that open to encountering the other. You know, there may be a little closure here, you know, or fear for one reason or another. How do you go about reaching out to them? And once you've reached them, what do you say?
Can I take that question first?
Yes.
I'm reminded of an interaction that I had a few years ago with young people, and I was nudging them to come to a talk of a great thinker. And a student stood up to me and said, Dr. Aram, we don't want to come to another NATO meeting. And I said, what is NATO? They said, no action, talking only. So, you know, and then I looked to them because this young person was representing also a certain frustration with the way interfaith dialogue is perceived, which is a lot of talking and very little concrete action. And I think that is what you're alluding to, challenging us to see what are concrete examples of dialogue. This also brings me back to what you said, Dr. Brodeur, about preparation for dialogue. A preparation both for what could be and what may not be even thought about, the transformative aspect of dialogue. And here I think I want to say is why is there this fear? Why is there this prejudice sometimes against dialogue? It's because it's not sometimes relevant with everyday life. And I think what KAICIID is doing in bringing this gift of dialogue, this opportunity to find the humanity in the other, but also to place it at the service of the larger world, the larger community. So when we gathered in India, for example, to confront the HIV epidemic, at one time, we had, next only to South Africa, we had the largest number of men, women, and children living with South Africa. We had to confront ourselves within our own communities as to how we spoke to one another, how we prepared our families, what was fueling the epidemic. And when we did it with sincerity, when we listened to one another about our failures, but also about possibilities, we were able to advance the work in changing the course of the HIV epidemic. So I think everyday relevance, also relevance of issues that affect us as a community could be also a very constructive classroom of understanding how we should listen to one another, but how we can work together as well.
Thank you, Dr. Aram. In any order, Your Eminence?
Thank you. You know, we are talking about dialogue, and dialogue presupposes that there is a free will of the other to engage. And there are at least two. We are for dialogue, we're not for monologue. Monologue would be a problem in the world. And especially if it's based on egoism. Where you are engaging and you are talking with the other, whether this is a difference of a cultural background or also religious or social difference. This is not the question. The question is that you engage, and you engage because you want to help find the truth in the person of the other. So you recognize the other as a person. So the personhood is very important. And when you come closer, you see that the prejudices and maybe the false understandings that you had are not there. You cannot force, of course, the other to engage into dialogue. And this is a question that when I said that it's a free will act. So I think we cannot force anybody to engage into this process. It's come and see, and I think come to engage more in order to have an outcome which definitely is going to be a positive one.
Thank you. An open invitation to both of you as well.
So first of all, I have to admit that there are those who are not impressed by what I do, who I cannot always get through to, and who might even be very hostile to what I do. And to tell the truth, I probably have encountered more hostility within my own faith tradition than I've encountered from other faith traditions. I'll tell you one story to illustrate that. I was actually scholar in residence at what you might call a very traditional Orthodox congregation this was in the United States, on Long Island. In other words, it was close to, I would say, an ultra-Orthodox congregation, and the very fact that they were inviting me to talk about dialogue was itself very positively significant. But after I'd given my presentation after services, one fellow comes up to me, almost frothing at the mouth, and pointing his finger at me. I don't know whether he actually touched me in the chest, but he might have done. It felt like that. If it wasn't actually physically, it was so emotionally fraught, I felt he was knocking me. And he said to me, "You are worse than Hitler." And therefore, if you ask them what's my response, first of all, I have to obviously both not only control myself, but try to understand to the best of my ability what's behind such a kind of comment. And so I was, of course, living within a community that is a community with this highly traumatized history. And you know the famous joke, just because I'm paranoid doesn't mean they're not trying to kill me. So within the Jewish community, there's some good reason historically to feel paranoid. This fellow was expressing his fear. His fear was that what I am doing in terms of the era dialogue might be letting people's guard down to thinking that there are good people out there and that not everybody wants to kill us or to be hostile towards us. And he was scared that by allowing that, I'm actually undermining his own security. So this was his trauma coming out. So it's really important for me, to the best of my ability, which is obviously limited, to be able to understand where the individual is coming from. And sometimes I can't get through. But what I need to do, I think, is first and foremost, and I think that goes for every religious tradition, to appeal to the most noble elements and sentiments of that religious tradition, to be able to articulate the teachings and say, look, you are called to aspire for a world that is just, righteous, peaceful, a world in which every human being's dignity is affirmed. How do we do that if it's not through engaging the other? Or do you think you're really being loyal to God's charge and calling by seeing the world as totally an adversarial role and not willing in any way to engage it? And then, of course, if it's possible, I would try and argue in practical terms, there are two choices in this world. There are plenty of bad things in this world. We can either curse the darkness or light a candle. What's the choice in that regard? And finally, I suppose I would try to point to examples of where we can overcome the understandable skepticism by pointing to success stories. And in my own community, there is probably no greater success story than the Jewish-Catholic relationship. Remember, the Catholic Church taught historically that Jews were condemned to wander, condemned and rejected by God because they had not recognized the Christian dispensation. Therefore, if they suffered, they deserved it. We were in league with the devil. We were the most condemnable of people. Today, popes describe the Jewish people as a dearly beloved elder brother of the Church, of the original covenant, never broken, never to be broken, a relationship that is intrinsic to its very identity. What is that but the product of dialogue, of engagement? And it's through engagement and dialogue we have overcome the most negative historical approach to such an amazing positive one. And I think that example is an inspiring one, and one that very often makes people stop and think and maybe to question whether their skepticism is justified. Because if we can overcome such negativity, I believe there is no relationship that is beyond transformation.
Thank you. And Dr. Samak.
There is a very interesting theory for Freud about the narcissism of differences. Freud says that no matter how these differences are small, we make it into the core of our identity and our personality. So dialogue to me, a friend here just made me remember yesterday this definition of dialogue. I wrote it in one of the pamphlets of KAICIID, that dialogue is the art of searching for the truth in the point of view of the other. This means when I am engaged in dialogue with the other, I start by confessing that I don't have the truth, that I am looking for the truth. I'm searching for the truth. I'll go to the point of view of the other who is different from me because I might find the truth there. That's why I respect the other. And I respect my difference with him because within this difference, truth might be there. So recognizing the differences between people, dialogue is the bridge to overcome the misuse of differences. And ignoring differences and trying to overcome it is a sort of suicide. We have seen, especially in the Middle East lately, we have seen phenomena, a tsunami of refusing the other, trying to eliminate the other, because this culture of building bridges was not safe, was not sound enough. And KAICIID, actually, we worked with KAICIID in order to promote this culture of recognizing and respecting and accepting differences between people and between individuals.
You know, when Dr. Samak was speaking about differences, I'm also reminded of a practice within Hindu tradition where unity is celebrated as well. It sounds very simple, but there's this idea of satsang, people coming together for good friendship or good companionship. And often the elements that go into a satsang, even today in the 21st century, is silence, singing together. When I was listening to the wonderful musicians here, I was reminded of this model of satsang, where you come together, in some ways in the presence of the other. You not only see the differences, the truth that may come from the other, but also the unity that you can experience with the other. And in all our traditions, we also have the mystical inspirations that have allowed us to see beyond form and figure and differences. And I think for us to be able to also draw on these examples of inspiring and positive stories and inspiring and positive examples of finding form, making sense of what seems at first glance to be complex and at loggerheads, but to be able to experience that is something that I hold close to. And Dr. Samak, you kind of reminded me of that. But also I think about the way we do dialogue, and I was very, very pleased with this section when Professor Abunima and Dr. Brodeur went about the 10 principles, because I think it's not only hummus and falafel that can be placed at the table where dialogue happens, but also I think preparation. And dialogue doesn't happen automatically. Different people don't come around in a circle or around a table automatically, and that is where the relevance of initiatives of organization and institutions like KAICIID come. Men and women coming together, young and old coming together, leaders and lay people coming together. It requires a certain attitude of welcome and belief, but it also requires a certain preparation. And I think these 10 steps for me was also a reminder that if some of these great aspirations for peace and shared coexistence have to become a reality, we have to prepare ourselves in local communities as well as at our high offices.
And add schnitzel.
Add schnitzel.
Right? And so, thank you, Dr. Aram. But I'm also interested in terms of your personal stories. You know, is there something along the way in this long journey that you've been through in discovering more and more about dialogue to be able to get to the point where you share these absolute nuggets about dialogue that you have done right now to all of us? Is there something, some event that actually was transformative in eventually getting you on board of this vision of dialogue and this path of dialogue that your whole lives, actually all of you, have been committed to?
There wasn't so much an event that led to this transformation, but there was an event that taught me a very critical lesson in the process of engagement. I was a very young, in fact, rather ridiculously young rabbi in Cape Town in South Africa, and this was at the height of apartheid. And I wanted very much the Jewish community to be engaged in bridge building and bringing communities together in the face of the evil, wickedness of the racial policies of the authority. And there hadn't been any interfaith structure in Cape Town up till then, none whatsoever. So I started hawking my wares about, meeting with different Christian leaders and with Muslim leaders, and they all agreed to be part of this interfaith initiative. But I knew that in a South African context, if I didn't involve the Dutch Reformed Church, it was going to be of limited value. The Dutch Reformed Church reflected the power base, was often called the Nationalist Party at prayer, and therefore I had to find somebody who would be appropriate to address. I heard of a dominee, a Dutch Reformed minister, downtown Cape Town, who was having dialogue with Catholics. That will not sound terribly significant to most of you, but anybody who knows the demonology of the Dutch Reformed Church know that there were two great dangers. One was called the zwart gevaar, the black danger, and the other was called the Roomse gevaar, the Catholic danger. And if this fellow was having dialogue with Catholics, I thought in my naivety, maybe he'll dialogue with Jews too. So I go along and I set up an appointment, and he graciously received me, and I opened with the gambit that had worked so well with all the others, you know, Father, Imam, Sheikh, Bishop, the things that bring us together are so important, the things that keep us apart. And he said to me, I have to do this with a South African accent, Rabbi, I cannot agree with you. The most important thing in my life keeps us apart. This is my belief in Jesus as my personal Savior. You did not share that, Rabbi, therefore you will burn in hell. And I cannot dialogue with you unless I do my Christian duty, which is to save you. And I had a moment which I don't even know whether I had seriously thought it out. It was a moment perhaps of divine inspiration. I said to him, well, Dominie, thank you for your honesty. I still would like if we could meet. I would like to understand you better. I would like you to understand me. But Dominie, if you believe it's your Christian duty to save me, you have to come along to our meetings. I'm giving you the opportunity. And I don't know whether it was my argument, but he did come along and he became less doctrinaire, and he brought in others into the process. Now, this for me was a lesson. It wasn't a theophany, as perhaps you were asking about, whether I suddenly understood it, but what I did understand was that you have to be pragmatic in this process. And you must not try not to allow a person's theology, even if you might not like it, to offend you. Try to find the ways in which you can engage people constructively, because it is precisely through the human engagement that you can allow them the opportunity to rethink or to re-understand themselves in relation to the other. So that was a very salutary experience, and it was through my commitment to social justice that I came to understand the importance of interfaith dialogue itself.
Dr. Samak.
Well, I have an experience, actually. It might be of interest for to share it here. In Lebanon, we are a community of communities. We are 18 religious communities in a small country of 4.5 million people. So we have this national committee which represent, it is not NGO, it's not official governmental committee. It is a representative committee to the 18 religious communities in Lebanon. So we were asked by the government of Sudan to help form a parallel committee, Sudanese committee of this kind, before Sudan was broken into 2 states. We went there, we were Christians and Muslims, 4 members of the committee and myself. We met the Minister of Justice, the Sudanese Minister of Justice. At that time, Sudan was raising the slogan of implementing Sharia on all Sudanese people, Christians and Muslims. And during our meeting with the minister, I told him this is against Islam. He was shocked. Implementing Sharia against Islam? What are you talking about? I said, implementing Sharia on Christians is against Islam. How? How do you explain it? I told him the Quran says, it's not my point of view. The Quran says about the Bible, there is light and guidance in the Bible. This is the Quranic text. And the Quran adds, let the people of the Bible follow what God revealed in the Bible. Now, the Quran didn't say, let the people of the Bible follow what God revealed in the Quran. He said in the Bible. And you want to implement the Sharia on them. This is contrary to the Quran. He looked at me and said, well, it is the first time it is like the first time I listened to this verse of the Quran. We have to think it over, but it was too late, and they didn't think it over, and Sudan was broken into 2 countries. This was really a very harmful experience we have been through, but the message was there, and up till now, even after Sudan was broken into 2 countries, the Sudanese government didn't implement the Sharia even on Muslims.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Samak.
Well, I'm not a good storyteller, but years ago, probably more than 15 years, I arrived in Tel Aviv airport, and the young officer looks at my passport and finds a stamp from Iran. And he says, you went to Iran to do what? You have family? I said, no. What do you go there for? I said, well, I was there for interreligious dialogue. And he goes, what is that? I said, if I explain you, are you sure you're going to understand? So I don't know if this was the way that they let me in the country. But definitely, it's another question I would like to answer that many people ask me. Why do you go to KAICIID? And what's the benefit out of KAICIID? And I can tell them just three, to be Trinitarian for once, that definitely we find more humanity, the recognition of the other. Definitely we learn how to become less egoistic and to be more tolerant to the others. And after all, we all go back to school because it's a learning process, and we learn by sitting as you've been sitting tonight and listening to us.
I probably don't have anything dramatic, but two simple things. I think my early exposure to the Gandhian movement and Mahatma Gandhi's interpretation and visualization of an India where every faith tradition coexisted was something that I grew up listening to. But whenever I went to and I say this with great respect, whenever I went to an interfaith conference, I saw only old men sitting on the stage. And it bothered me because I found not only were not young people sitting, there were not enough women. And I say this with no judgment call. It was just an image that was incomplete for me. It was an incomplete image in the way that it represented society. And so there was a personal call, Dr. Brodeur, that the new world would need women's participation. Gandhiji himself said it very beautifully. All work is half done if women are not involved. But there was also a desire to be working alongside some of the most giving leaders and some exceptional minds. And this was my initial urge and desire to be part of interfaith dialogue. The second, of course, for me, and here I go back to, I think, to Dr. Samak and to you. Both of you have mentioned the compositeness of identity. While looking at the compositeness of identity, I think one aspect of my identity that I relate to very much is my professional or my vocational commitment to children. And when the UN started consultations around the world on the Convention on the Rights of the Child, Executive Director Jim Grant was one of the first diplomats in the world to engage religious communities. And the material that came out of those consultations was such a beautiful confluence of spirit and action, of aspirations and concrete actions, that I have remained committed to see that this first step of collaboration, this articulation of of a world that was fit for its children, should be made a reality. And that is my commitment, my everyday commitment in a part of the world which has a significant number of children, India, to be able to bring into action, bring into life what this collective contribution can look like.
Your powerful stories, your enlightening words only leave me 3 words, which are actually the same, but just in different languages. Thank you, merci, dankeschön.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, all of you. That was very inspiring, and I would ask you to go back and take your seats. Thank you so much. Thank you, Patrice, for giving me a break. I'm not really used to shut up for a while, but I'm really grateful to Patrice for giving me a little break. Thank you. There is good news and there is bad news. We are coming to an end. Where are we going is our next question, and looking ahead, the title of our next segment. And it's the last segment. And I would now like to invite two individuals up here on stage who've been working with KAICIID, and they are going to, encouraged by and inspired by what Dr. Aram just said, are going to explain a little bit how the flag of dialogue can be carried to future generations. I would now like to ask Ms. Nargis Balakishayeva, who works with the World Organization of the Scout Movement and who hails from Azerbaijan, and Reverend Alex Goldberg, who's working towards becoming a rabbi in the UK and who has worked with policymakers and community leaders for many years to strengthen the ties across religious divides. May I ask the two of you on stage, please? Thank you.
Good evening. Guten Abend. I've learned so much tonight, and just want to thank Maria for hosting tonight. That was fantastic. And I've learned something new about dialogue. If all else fails, get out the hummus.
Hungry.
I want to tell you and Giz another story about food. There was a very famous rabbi that lived 2,000 years ago, and Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. And he asked his student Tavi to go out to the marketplace to find him something good. So Tavi walked around the marketplace looking for something good, and he got to the butcher's counter, the meat counter, and he saw there a beautiful piece of beef tongue. So he brought him home tongue. The rabbi smiled. A couple of weeks later, the rabbi said, Tavi, come here. Get me something in the market that's bad. Huh? So Tavi walked around the marketplace again, and he went to the same meat counter, and he brought back another piece of tongue. The rabbi goes, hold on both occasions you brought me a piece of tongue. Why? You see, teacher, a tongue has the power to do good and to do evil. When it does good, it's the best thing in the world. When it does evil, it's the worst. When dialogue is done well, it opens up boundaries. It opens up possibilities. I'm only going to give one story tonight, the story that pushed me into interfaith dialogue. I went to a school which wasn't very diverse. There were 6 Jews, 6 Asians, a couple of other kids from minority backgrounds, and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of white Christians. And we had a religious assembly, a Christian assembly one day, and we were told that non-Christians would go to hell. We've had that story tonight, go to hell. And then they added a place worse than Auschwitz. And for a young Jew, that wounded me deeply. A debate ensued in our class for a whole week about this assembly until an Anglican, a Church of England minister, walked in. And he engaged with the debate. He said, I don't share the view of the speaker. I don't believe in exclusive salvation. I believe in a more inclusive form. The good people who do good deeds, whatever their religion, will have a place in the world to come. A few weeks later, one of my teachers was sick, and this priest replaced him for 6 months. Dialogue ensued, and not only with him, but with a group of students in my class. Roll forward 10 years, I'm director of something called the Board of Deputies, the main UK Jewish representative body. And the UK government had proposed legislation that would impact and may even get rid of Jewish schools in our country. So I wrote to my old teacher, and I said, help me. And he could help me. He was now Bishop of Portsmouth. He was chair of the Church of England Education Committee, and he was a member of the House of Lords. His deputy wrote back to me and said, I'm really sorry, Bishop Kenneth has cancer. He's too ill to attend the debate. Other lords decided to excuse themselves for political reasons. So I watched the debate, and to my surprise, Bishop Kenneth got out in the middle of the debate. And he started with these words, this legislation does not impact on the Church of England, but it does impact on others. That night, my friend spoke for me. He spoke for us. And yes, he made a difference. We face a challenge in dialogue. It takes effort, it takes bravery, and it takes time. And Nargiz is going to tell us, and I'm delighted, why 44 million Scouts value interreligious dialogue.
Thank you, Alex. It's really inspiring story to hear your story. And as you've probably mentioned, tongue can do good or can do evil. And that's actually what happened in the last World Scout Youth Forum. World Scout Youth Forum is a platform for young Scout leaders from all over the world to gather together and participate in the decision-making processes. As one of the purposes of Scouting is to create a better world, it's important to us to provide the young leaders with the tools and the skills to participate in decision-making that promotes peace and understanding. As after the forum, they get back to their homes and implement their skills learned at various levels of their communities. So with this in mind, WOSM and KAICIID trained 60 participants from all over the world in Dialogue for Peace program. The purpose of the program was to promote use of a dialogue as a tool for learning and promoting peace and understanding within the Scout movement. And participants really enjoyed it, and also one of the participants reflected, learning about dialogue, we acquire a tool to create a positive change at all levels of society. But nobody expected that they will have a chance to practice soon the skills they have earned. Right after the Dialogue for Peace program, we had a forum, World Scout Youth Forum. There were 236 participants coming from 116 countries, including those 60 participants from the dialogue training. Everything was great. Participants enjoyed participating, working in international mixed teams, until the very end. On the last day of the forum, there was a voting on the declaration of the forum. And this included also discussion on diversity and inclusion, including identifying position on sexual identity issues. At that point, one of the participants stood up and, using very extreme wording, called it illness in some of the countries. It raised tension up in the room. As a director, I was freezed. I didn't know what to do next and what to expect from the participant, because they're youth from 18 to 25 and you don't know how they're going to behave afterwards. So we took a break. But what happened during the break, that was amazing. Participants who were trained as a part of the dialogue training took the initiative. They gathered together during the break, they worked together, discussed with all participants, and afterwards made a common statement. So after the break, the girl from Liechtenstein and the boy from Egypt come on stage. And what was they said next? It was amazing. I still have a goosebump remembering this story. They said, we all come from different countries, from different cultures, nations, and backgrounds. We recognize that each individual is unique and a member of a diverse society. We must focus on things that unite us rather than divide us. That was their key message that was also included in the forum declaration afterwards. And I was amazed, like, how this youth can make such a wise decision, such a statement. So they choose the power of to do good over the path to do harm. And there was only 60 participants trained within this program. Can you imagine what would have been if all of them would have been trained? I believe in such case, we'll have a peaceful future.
Oh, that's so beautiful, Nargiz. I guess the challenge that you have with the Scouts there is a generic challenge we have for the next generation, or the younger generation. You know, ladies and gentlemen, we have an opportunity as never before. With the internet, with telecommunications, we can jump over boundaries, whether those boundaries are of nationality, of faith, of ethnicity. It gives us a world of opportunity. But at the same time, we can set the controls on those platforms to create silos, where we live in an echo chamber and we only listen to people who agree with us. And worse still, promote hatred against the other team. It could be a football team, the other religion, the other people. The Emeritus President of Al-Azhar once said in my presence, Twitter was given to us by Allah. It just depends how you use it, and he was right. When we use dialogue for good, we choose peace over war, diversity over singularity, us over I, love over hate, exploring the possible instead of exclaiming the impossible. And as a person of faith, and we've talked about that tonight, I do it for this reason. And I quote a son of Vienna, Martin Buber: when two people relate to each other authentically, God is a spark that surges between them. In the marketplace of ideas, just as that marketplace 2,000 years ago, the successors of TAVI have a similar choice, whether to use the power of tongue to do good rather than harm.
And this is why all the stories and experiences we have heard about tonight are so important.
They're the stories of the infinite possible.
The language of hope, of all our tomorrows.
In the spirit of dialogue. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nagis and Alex.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to the two of you again. A very precious contribution. And for the last time, I'm going to leave and let the stage to Cobario, to Georg Eichberger, Herwig Schaffner und Jakob Lackner. Their last title, Showdown. Thank you, Cavario. This was fantastic. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us here tonight. This is the end of the so-called official bit of the evening, and you're all very warmly invited to join the second bit of the evening, which is a reception in the entrance. Please do have a look and do look at the program. There is also a contact card in there which we would ask you to fill in if you are interested, because the new data regulation data protection regulation that you might have come across already means that the partners of this event cannot share your contacts. So if you are interested, please fill in the card. I can only once again thank you so much for your interest and your coming. I can thank the ones that have invited us, and let's all now have something in between hummus and falafel and schnitzel that we've been talking about so much, and a drink. Thank you so much.